転生。
Greetings and salutations, my fellow raiders, and welcome to the second boss in Siege of Orgrimmar, the Fallen Protectors. In this encounter you are going to fight against 3 Pandaren, Rook, He and Sun, who you may or may not remember from your daily quests with the Golden Lotus before patch 5.4. The fight is all about controlled DPS, because you not only have to kill all 3 Pandaren nearly at the same time, you even have to bring them to 66% and respectively to 33% of their HP each individually. That makes it difficult to multi-dot or cleave throughout the whole fight, and you may want to stick to single target DPS only and have a close eye on their HP bars at all times. This fight contains 3 bosses, but you actually only have to tank Rook and He. But all 3 will use their ability, which I'm going to cover later on, outside their desperate measure phases the whole time. Your first target in this fight should be Rook. The tank, who has to tank Rook, has to position the boss in a way that he never faces towards anybody else but the tank himself. That is because of his first ability called Vengeful Strikes, which will stun everyone in front of him for 3 seconds and deal some damage. From time to time he will perform a set of 2 abilities in combination, namely Clash and Corruption Kick, where he will choose a random party member who he will draw towards himself and then start his AoE Corruption Kick, where everybody in range of that ability needs to move out of it. Another ability he will use regularly is Corrupted Brew, where he will hurl a keg of his Corrupted Brew towards a distant target, which will be indicated by a small but visible animation, as you can see here. Anyone hit by the brew will get some damage and will be slowed for 15 seconds, which can mess up some stuff later on, so try to avoid it if possible. When you brought him down to 66% of his HP, he will start his first desperate measure phase, where he will summon 3 adds, namely Embodied Misery, Embodied Sorrow and Gloom. The tank who just fought Rook the whole time should pick up Misery. The other 2 adds don't really need to be tanked, so that the secondary tank can still deal as normal with He. Starting the desperate measure phase, Embodied Sorrow should be your first priority target. She does a move called Inferno Strike, where she will pick a random target and create a big yellow circle, as you can see on screen right now, around it. Inferno Strike will deal 1.2 million fire damage to the target and inside the whole circle. That damage can be absorbed by running out of the group and use a strong defensive cooldown or immunity effect of that person being targeted by the ability. But mainly try to just group up at one spot with everyone beside the tanks, because the 1.2 million damage will be divided by every person inside the circle. Your next target should be Embodied Gloom, who casts Corruption Shock the whole time. And that is why 2 melee should stay on Gloom the whole time to interrupt that cast to minimize the incoming raid damage from it, since it is AoE and especially painful if the whole group got to stand together for Inferno Strike. Embodied Misery should be your last target, since her ability Defiled Ground isn't all that special, it just creates a void zone, as can be seen on screen right now. And that is why the one tanking her should pull her away from the raid and try not to stand in those void zones. After you have dealt with Rook's desperate measure phase, the Misery tank should be back on him again, and you should continue now to DPS Sun instead of Rook. Sun, like I mentioned, doesn't need to be tanked, because she will cast her spells at random targets. Her most important move, one where your healers should have an eye on their boss mod timers out for, is called Calamity, which will deal 30% of their own maximum HP as damage to every single raid member. Before that ability goes off, everyone should be at almost full HP before the ability hits the raid each time, and maybe use a small healing cooldown after it has hit for a faster recovery. What Calamity will do too is dispel any Shadowword Bane DOT Sun has already put on random raid members, if there are any at all. Those Shadowword Bane DOTs are dispellable, and you should try to dispel them very quickly, because when they start to tick, they will spread to other raid members. If your dispels are already on cooldown and there is still a Bane on a member, you got to have a close eye on them, since that dot ticks for some damage. Ideally, you have 2 raid members who keep a close watch on her cast the whole time over the whole fight, even while fighting the other 2 bosses, since she will cast Sharthir whenever she got her other abilities on cooldown, which should be kicked if possible, because it is an AoE which deals minor damage but can eat up some of your healer's mana throughout the whole fight. When she reaches 66% of her HP, she will go into her Desperate Measure phase, where she will create a barrier in the middle of the arena where everyone but the tanks should stand in, because everything outside is a single huge void zone. The tanks should stay outside because they still have to deal with Rook's vengeful strikes and He's poison patches on the ground. Outside of that barrier are 2 big adds, which have to be killed to end her Desperate Measure phase, ideally by focused range damage. Those big adds will summon a lot of small adds which will try to enter the barrier. Just let your melees deal with those little adds while your range DPS focus the big ones. After her Desperate Measure phase is over, focus your damage on He. He got some tricks up his sleeve too. The one tanking him got to watch out for his Gouge cast. The tank got to turn his back towards He whenever he casts this ability, because if he gets hit by this ability while facing him, he will be stunned for 6 seconds and he will reset his threat and attack someone else until he is taunted again. Other than that, he will use 2 different poisons, one dealing some nature damage instantly on his attacks, and the other creating some poison void zones on the ground, which should be avoided, and he should be tanked outside the main camp because of those 2. From time to time, he will shadow step a random raid member and use his Garrot ability, which will leave a dot on that player, which needs to be healed through till you bring him down to 66% of his HP, and with this starts his Desperate Measure phase. During his Desperate Measure phase, he will spawn an Embodied Anguish ad, which needs to be killed to end his Desperate Measure phase. One random player will be targeted by the Mark of Anguish, who will have a special extra action button to use, and that player should target the He tank and push that extra action button to throw the Mark of Anguish to that tank. The one who has the mark on himself also gets a debuff called Debilitation, reducing their armor by 50% for 2 minutes. But since the one who is tanking He won't get that much damage from He anyway, it can be thrown to that tank without hesitation. After you are done with He's Desperate Measure phase, you repeat the whole process of reducing Rook's, Sun's and He's HP in that order again, this time to respectively 33% of their HP, and after the last Desperate Measure phase, try to balance your damage on all 3 bosses or constantly shift to the one with the highest HP remaining and try to kill them all almost at the same time because of their Bond of the Golden Lotus buff, which would heal them up to 20% HP again if you fail to do so. If you like to see any of my other boss guides for this current rating tier, please check out my channel's playlist or click on the annotation on screen to view the guide for the following boss. And if you liked that guide or found it to be helpful, please leave a like or subscribe to my channel for more guide videos or other nonsense. And if you got any questions, please leave them in the comment box below. My name has been ScepticalPanda, thanks for watching and happy raiding!